Okay, you guys, we're sitting in Georgina's work, but Audrey's work is all around us in the form of living trees. You do so many other things besides that, so with apologies, I will be making you talk about the trees and concrete again in a minute because they're obsession worthy. But since we're sitting in Georgina's main section, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
And I kind of always just sort of start with like, what are we looking at? But, you know, I've been thinking about the two of you as a pair, as a conversation, as well as individually. And I really kind of have alighted on this idea of like, what is ephemeral? What is fixed? What is permanent? Is that even the point, right? What is natural and organic? What are you as an artist able to control? And I feel like those, generally speaking, those kinds of ideas play out in both your work in really interesting different ways. But with you especially, I know that you are chasing these fleeting moments, but you're making these really physically substantial fixed objects out of them. And that, I think, is where I'd like to start with you today. But really, I also want you to just kind of be able to say whatever you would like to say. Intro over.
Okay.
Georgina, welcome and thank you.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. I think I know all of you, most of you, but I'm Georgina. This is my work. I'm a photographer or a photo-based artist. And yes, what Shana was saying is a lot. Well, so let's just start by saying my work is really a series of self-imposed rules that I just create. I work with film still, and so I photograph, I use medium and large format cameras. I work with very slow film, and I have a tendency to try and hold on to that, which is sort of the space of what we see and what we can't see. Photography is a medium that is very, in a way, rigid. I think it was Baldessari who said the camera was really a tyrant because everything is dictated by the size of
Right,
the
you
film.
have choices, but the parameters.
Choices. Yes, and the paper is one size, and you have to. So I try to break out of all those rules, partly because that's just the way I am, and they're also very self-imposing, and mostly they were imposed by men, and so I want to not do that. It follows.
Not you.
Not to. But yes, it's so I start usually with a photograph, which is a very long exposure, and then I print, and then I rephotograph, and then I print and I rephotograph, and I do that many times over. So I copy myself. At times, I also collect old photographs, because my work deals with the passage of time. So to me, all photographs are already have within themselves that passage of time. And so I rephotograph them and print them, and once again, rephotograph them and copy myself over and over, which also brings up the idea of when is a copy an original? How many times after that is my photograph? And then my last iteration, I go to the darkroom and I crumble my paper, I cut it, I fold it, and then it gets under the enlarger and it's moving as it's being exposed, which also
like the crinkles are kind of uncrinkling themselves and all that.
Exactly, they start to open, which makes them one-offs as opposed to, it also breaks what the photography, the whole aim of photography was to be able to make as many as possible, right? Endless copies. Mine are singular pieces of work.
But they're singular at the end of a process of endless copying. That's so interesting.
And because also I can't replicate how the paper will move once it's been printed. So they all are singular moments. I think I've always been very interested in language and the passage of time and how history gets written. But I definitely can say that motherhood radically changed my way of making work because of the constraints of being in a different country where my family wasn't here, and I had to have my baby with me at all times. And so I would go to the beach just while she napped, because she would only nap while moving. And so she would dictate the time of my photographs being exposed. I would open my camera, and as soon as she woke up, I would close my camera and go home. And then I would send out my film to get it processed and printed, because I couldn't do it at the time since I was nursing. And I would get back the little photographs, which I would put on the wall. And out of desperation, also sometimes I would just re-photograph those on the wall, because I couldn't leave if she was, at nighttime and I was alone.
It's a lot.
And then I would send them back, and that started sort of this conversation, in a way, between the lab and me of seeing the new pieces. I would also re-photograph them as they were. So whether the sun hit them or not, or there was a huge shadow, or which kind of mimicked to me the translation.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And also another place, like that replaces the kind of unique, I can't replicate the circumstances that you had been achieving in the dark room.
Exactly.
If you deal with like atmospheric, because even if you stood there at 9:18 every day with permission from young madam,
right,
the light might be different today. Who knows, cloud weather, what have you. And so, right. So again, there's a rule, but not a rule, but it's your rule. Because you could just be like, sorry, kid, you can eat in 5 minutes. You're not dying, but you're not that person. And so you choose to accept a rule.
Right.
Right. And so it's really fascinating to me how conceptual that framework is, and yet how at every chance you get, how physically embodied the consequences of that are.
Yes. Yeah. It also made me think of, every time we tell a story, we say it differently.
Yeah.
So even though it was the same photograph, it continuously changed, because every time we tell a story, we add some things and we take away.
Right.
We also edit ourselves to whomever we're saying it to. And also, if I made let's say, a memory here, well, it happened in English, as I say, and if I say it to my mother, I say it to her in Spanish, which is different already than
right.
how it is. So I was sort of mimicking the process of translating and memory making, and it started as personal. Then I thought about it, of course, a collective history and our stories, and the way stories get told and history is written, all the things that get left out.
Intentionally or otherwise.
Exactly. And
interesting.
Yes, it was sort of...
I love that. Okay, and it's so funny because while you're talking, like because I'm the writer, it's like the language, words are like, ooh, that word has two meanings, and one of them is for Andre, which is right. Because when you're talking about so your turn to start. Speaking of the bonsais in concrete, this is an impossible object. It presents as a total paradox, a thing that shouldn't be. So it's kind of like, what's the wizardry? But the wizardry is a lot of rules and a process that you invented to do a thing in a way that it has to be done, and also a way that it shouldn't / isn't done. And also careful, constant attention and atmospherics and uniqueness. I feel like there's a lot banging around in that way that you share, even though your work is so different. So similar setup, and it's kind of a shortcut because we've done like a couple of talks and we know each other for so long. But the idea of that captivates me so much with them is what I just said a minute ago. You're looking at something that basically should not exist. And so it seems extraordinarily unlikely to thrive. And so I would love to hear you just talk about why and wherefore and what it means to you to create those works.
Well, similar to your work, most of my work's based on time and the idea of what time is, and no matter what you look at, you'll never see an artwork, it'll never look the same to you if you see it ever. You go back and look at it every day, it's going to look different to you every time, because your personal experience is going to be different, and you bring that to everything you see. And so I thinking about work, how about, why can't the work change with you? So then it's guaranteed that the experience will be different because the work's always going to change, and it'll change with the environment. So it'll become almost sculpted by the environment.
Like a never step in the same river twice kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you think about every instance is like that.
But to clarify, that's
and so the artwork is that, like, it's representations of these things that are constantly changing, and it's funny because the way you handle photography is like, that's one of my, I do a lot of photography, but for different reasons. But the idea of capturing a moment it seems like such an awkward, like, weird thing to me. And then, like, the instance of a clear photograph, and with your work, I'm sorry, I'm talking about, but it's like you're capturing this instance, but it's talking about itself. It's telling you it's an instance. It's not saying this is a frozen moment. It's almost like a moment in action. And so you're actually seeing time in the work, which is really interesting to me. Now you're not just seeing a frozen object. Anyway, so back to my work, it's like, that's what I don't want to make objects. I want to make these things. And so just living in the city where we are, Southern California, ficus are everywhere, concrete is everywhere. Concrete is like one of the oldest technologies. It took over the earth. Like, the Romans took concrete and they took over like 2 continents with it. And it was just this inert, crumbled up limestone mixed with water, and they were able to conquer everything and lay the groundwork for, like, our civilization the way it is. And so the concrete is sort of that representation of our dominance. And then the tree, like, regardless of what we think, we are not, like, more powerful than just the whole world, the whole like system of nature that exists on this planet. That is always going to go, and we're almost fighting it constantly. So the tree is almost like taking that back, and so that's why they're put together. It's really this. They are these 2 opposing forces, but not really, because limestone's natural. It's like, so the concrete actually is very nurturing in a way to the tree. It supports it.
Well, like, when water gets in concrete, that allows it, for example, a bonsai tree to live in concrete. Yeah. But it also is the key reason why a building will eventually fall down.
Yeah, and that's what...
At the same time, right? Like, water and concrete's like the worst thing that could possibly happen, unless you're the tree.
Yeah.
That's
right. And ultimately, like, ideas of things like entropy or whatever, it's to maintain that nothing will last forever. A tree grows, and it's like energy. It takes energy to grow and evolve. Once the energy stops flowing, it'll stop. But the same thing with concrete. Concrete it starts with a certain amount of energy that's holding it in its form. And as this time goes by, that energy disperses through other forces, maybe a tree, maybe water, maybe someone dropping it or hitting it with a hammer. That energy is expelled, and it'll fall apart. So they both work the same way, and it's all based on, like, time. So over time, these things happen. So you can't run away from time, and that's all part of entropy, because over time, really the energy is constantly being released.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's interesting too, because there are things that someone who buys one of your sculptures can do to keep the tree alive, but not like forever. It's not an elven tree. Like, it's going to die, like every tree anyway. Yeah. Right? And like all of us anyway. And so there's this real poignancy in there that, like, there's this, it feels like such an on-the-nose metaphor for, like, life, that, like, for this amount of time, there are things you can do to keep this tree alive.
Yeah.
And good luck to you both. And past that point, it isn't even your fault anymore, because mortality is a thing that's bigger than you and me and the tree. And so the fact that that's encapsulated in it, but like that the art, thinking about like an artwork that has a biological half-life is also fascinating. Like if I'm an archivist, you're my worst nightmare, right? If I'm some kind of conservator and here you come, I'm like, what do you, because 1 or 2 generations, maybe within my lifetime, we don't know how long the tree. And so that way of being with like a fine art sculpture is not common as well. So there's a whole other set of other things that are being disrupted there, like, you know, market forces or whatever, that I find ironically quite subversive, considering that it's such a kind of enchanting living object, and yet it's like it's kind of pulling all these things apart with it to me.
I mean,
do you accept that, or are you like, I don't think about that, but you do, but you don't?
No, that's intentional. I mean,
okay,
the intention of it not being able to be purchased and like put to a storage, because my over experience of being in this art world and seeing how the market works, you see artwork being purchased and then never seeing the light of day.
Like that thing's not going to do well in a free port in Switzerland.
No, and
right. So
no, it
takes a certain kind of person to almost adopt it rather than collect it.
Exactly. It's not a collection of an object. It's an exception, like accepting something into your life. Like you're committing to taking care of this thing, and you're committing to a relationship with it. And that seems really weird, but
it does, but in the best way. But like in a way that I think, you know, we're a kind of weirdness that is to be encouraged, because it forces you to think about what you're doing here, all of us, in a different way. And also too, though, you know, you are a maker, like you make good stuff well. So even when the tree is no more, there's this architectural armature that once supported the tree that is still a compelling sculpture. So it's not the same either as just a plant that you love until it dies. There's this ruin or something that it leaves behind that is easier to take care of, but a little bit melancholy, but still an interesting object. And they're not all just concrete, right? Like the one in the middle with the wood and the cradle and the lights, and the little ones upstairs where there's not a living component, but it's still, you know, so there are other considerations at play. It's not
right. It's
not a banana taped to a wall. In other words,
I mean, but even with the banana taped to the wall, that is about the experience. That piece exists more in terms of, at least for me, is in terms of the visceral experience of seeing that object taped to a wall, and that's a lot of what my work is meant to do. It's not market driven. It's about your experience the moment you see it, and it's about like this crazy idea that art is about, you know, experience and not about, you know, making money, selling or trade,
or just the collecting as a kind of elevated shopping. Because shouldn't we always think about how we're going to take care of a piece of art when we buy it, no matter what that piece of art is? Shouldn't we be like, where in my home will it thrive? You know, like how excited am I to see this every day or every time I go to that house or whatever it is? And it's quite obvious that that many people do. I'm sure everyone here does, but many do not think of acquiring art in that way.
Right.
And there's like a character of like empathy, and you know, a lot of museum people that I've interviewed over the years, one of their favorite tropes, but it never gets old, is to remind me that the Latin root that became the word curator actually means caretaker. It doesn't mean decider. It means caretaker, actually. And so there are some people who are more clued into that than others, I guess.
Yes.
And with every artwork, though, they do have a time, you know, like nothing lasts forever. If you go to Italy and, you know, in Rome and all those Berninis all over the place, like those are maintained constantly. It's like, it's a constant battle to keep those things from dissolving.
Yeah.
And it's just a different time scale, where this is more about, it's more on closer to what our time is, the plants, but it's talking about that. And I mean, with your photography, these can't be out in the light forever, because they'll just dissolve.
And also, I was going to say, the materiality that you make these photographs with, especially this is no picnic to take care of either, okay, as an object, let's be real. So that is a challenge of a different sort, right? It's like, there's no protective glass doing your work of caring for this for you. This lives in your space, it breathes the air with you.
Right.
And you have to engage with this physically regularly to make sure. And, and I love the monumentality of it, but then it's built of such fragile things.
Right.
And so it's not the same level of it's going to die, but it's close to that, because you are kind of taking it on, and I know a lot of photographers who hate to put their work behind glass because of what it does.
Right.
Or museum glass, which is for those who don't know, about $5 million fucking dollars a square inch.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't reflect, even if there's a lot of black in there. So yay, but oh my God, it's truly you could buy a car or frame your show.
Yes.
So really, a lot of photographers are trying to figure out ways to show their work, but now you just have photo paper out in the world.
I know.
You can't, that's not acceptable. So it really is so interesting to me to be having one of the more thorny or difficult to solve sets of problems about the physicality of our work actually happening in the photography space, which is so rarely something people think of in terms of objecthood. And so I feel that's something that your work knocks down as well.
Yes, thank you. And I also, the whole idea of imperfection in a photograph also, that's the goal of a photographer, is to have perfect prints. But, the goal of a photographer is to have a perfect print always. But for me, it's exactly the opposite, which is built within the process, right? It's the scratches, the folds, the tears, because I also feel, and that's how I feel our work connects a little bit, that it's not about a single story, but rather a multitude of stories. And that gets created only with time and mistakes and the element of chance also, which is a big part of my work.
Yeah. I agree. And I think there's something very human about both of the work in that exact way. I've been having a lot of, not only me, but everyone in the whole world is talking all about, the imminence of our robot overlords and whatnot, and all the things that the algorithm can do better than us and blah, blah, blah. So that's fine because, it learned from us. It didn't,
right.
It uses M dashes because Emily Dickinson used M dashes. It's not a sign of something, okay? You learned that from us. Anyway. We're not stealing, you stole. We're just here. Okay. But when it comes to art making, I've had these conversations, and my friend Joy Ray, I don't know if she's going to get sick of me quoting her, but I don't care because it's so good. She's a textile artist. And someone else in the conversation said to her something well, at least robots can't sew. And she goes, no, girl, robots can sew. Robots can't sew badly. I know. And I was like, oh my God, you just changed my brain with that, because the end game of that is proof of humanity is going to start coming down to imperfections,
exactly.
To so-called mistakes, to the little pentimenti, to the little piece of dust that got caught, but honestly, I can't, to all of that. And right, the seam, the visible seams, the things that don't live forever, the things that require you to
exactly.
That kind of stuff is like this balsamic reduction of what humanity is gonna mean. And I'm personally super fine with that. I sense both of you are too, but I can see how that, yes, it's gonna be a conversation.
Yes. It's going to be a process.
For people who are already moving toward whatever perfection means, it's, I don't know, that might be the stuff that could maybe be done. I don't know what better even means, but like, I don't go for perfection either, so I'm not getting all the way to what that,
Right.
but I would imagine that like, if there is a very serious and very important neighborhood of art history that sees what has always investigated what happens when you remove the traces of the hand of the artist.
It's not.
And that's been a very valid framework if that's interesting. It's a thing. So I feel like they're in more trouble than the messy people are.
I hope so. I think that the
Right?
danger of it is that it reduces it to a single story. And single stories separate.
Oh, she said the danger is it reduces it to a single story.
I mean, there's no way to
have it
engage
be.
with anyone or anything or any place unless you get to know all the sides of that one thing or place, or right. And so the only way to engage with a work of art is to precisely be using your hands and walking around it and stepping over it and turning it and putting it back together, and
Yeah,
which is something that AI
can't do.
can't do
No.
because they just perfectly put it together at once.
Yeah. Well, and we're like allegedly perfectly, but because they don't even admit that there's any room for error, they end up gaslighting the entire, anyway.
Exactly.
So, and the AI is lying to you guys, by the way, about everything. It's not Google. It's not your favorite professor. It makes shit up. It's called hallucinations. If you're a Philip K. Dick fan, that's amazing. If you're trying to actually learn something, it's not amazing. Be careful.
Yes.
But I love the ways in which both of you engage the whole, I love what you just said about, because people can't walk up and put their grimy hands all over your artwork. However, the evidence that you did it, but it does engage the rest of our bodies in other ways, whether it's scale, where it's bigger than you and you have to kind of deal with it, or whether there's mystery, so you have to get up and decide if this is the one that's crinkled or if it's like, so you
Exactly.
it makes you stand in front of them longer to kind of solve the little mystery or find the moments of humor. Once you find one thing, then you get what the rest of it is. And it's obviously the same thing with you. There's this sort of like Alice in Wonderland level curiosity, and it brings people to the work, and then all the other stuff has time, and you have to walk around it and maybe under it if you can, and see what's happening. And I think that is just a level of engagement that most people don't give to every work of art, even when they love it. We're just not like, we're short attention spans within an inch of our life right now. So anything that makes people stand there for 4 minutes instead of 40 seconds is a massive win already.
Yes.
I think.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
that's part of it too, is the way that it's the space around it.
Yes.
I mean, there's something. It's funny because the analogy of her thing, your like analogy toward photography, or what I see is what your analogy of AI is your use of the outliers that are not part of like the basic formula is what makes your work like this amazing. To me, you're using like camera in the dark room as paintbrush or chisel,
Right.
like those classical terms of art making. It's not about the camera; it's about that other. You're taking using these other things as tools, and it's like fascinating because the mistakes or the imperfections or the outliers are so interesting.
Putting your physical, oily fingerprints on stuff in the dark room. fail, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And yet you like can't. So yeah, all of that. Yeah.
I mean, but look around at this building, and like this story you see here is like what's in the work, and it's like you look at all these imprints of life and existence, and there's so much more than this perfect moment captured. It's like you captured this like a set of time, that's within it, and it has all these variables. And it's really interesting.
No, I agree. I was having a conversation with somebody about like the intersection between like performance art versus like video art. And, the thing that kept coming back to it is this idea of wanting to create an experience that unfolds over time. Right. That's what, because that kind of fights the scroll, right? Like if the scroll is just going vertical like this forever, what's the thing that like catches you and makes you actually go like instead? And time seems to be the thing that people keep coming back to. Like, what's the thing that gives you a sense that it's more than just like another piece of information? As cool as that's my favorite information of today. Scroll. But what's the thing that makes you bring your whole self bodily into more congregation with the work?
Right.
What is, and there's a million answers to that.
Exactly.
But it's a great question to keep in mind in this.
Yes.
Empathy, I think, is an active ingredient in both of your work, which I really feel and appreciate. And I think the world could use a little more of that also. So thank you both. Thanks for coming down here. Thank you for Saturday afternooning with us. It's a pretty respectable crowd for a late summer Saturday afternoon in DTLA. I'm kind of proud of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.